Karina Natityugena Bhagavan Vishate Vidhi. Persons who hear Srimad-Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifested in their hearts within a short time. Om Jnana Timandasya Vinanjana Salakaya Kakshmanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasapale Srimati Japtaka Swami Nityanamne Namachaya Padaya Nitai Kripa Padayane Gaurakata Damadaya Nagara Gramatarine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasapale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamne. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pucharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Passacha Deshatayane. So this verse here, or this statement about hearing Bhagavatam is mentioned and emphasized throughout the Srimad-Bhagavatam. In fact, in the first two cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it's mentioned many times, the importance of it. The Bhagavatam is a conversation between Maharaja Pariksit and Shukadeva Goswami, and as was narrated by Sutta Goswami to the sages of Naimisharanya. Maharaja Pariksit basically asked a few questions. Phrased in one question, he was asking a few points. As we know, Maharaja Pariksit was cursed to die within 7 days. So he gave up his kingdom and sat by the bank of the Ganges, preparing himself for death. Normally, when someone hears that they're going to die within a certain period of time, they get very desperate. They will plead and plead with the doctors. Is there any other any other cure, anything else we can do? Maybe a second opinion, a third opinion, fourth opinion, maybe some expert somewhere around in the world that we can try. They desperately hang on. And if they find out that nothing else, they may try to squeeze out the last few days or months of their existence. And they cannot leave behind, and they want to leave behind so many instructions. See, in the last way they're trying to leave behind instructions and trying to take responsibility. Instead of taking responsibility for their own life, they still try to take responsibility for the family. So it's very pitiful, actually. It's very. I've seen also my mother. She's 90 years old. She's always talking about, may not see you again. Like now, maybe going to. Next week I'm going to Europe for 2 months. They say, well, we may not see you when you come back. Always talking. They're always thinking like that. But at the same time, they are just only hankering just to see one more time. And to see the children, to see the grandchild one more time. Maybe I'll never see them again. And it's very sad to see that this is all they're living for, without Krishna consciousness. Hanging on to whatever material life that they have, which is fading away. So Maharaja Pariksit will sit there, and because everyone in the universe knows that this is a very great event, because Maharaja Pariksit was not an ordinary person. He's a great king, great devotee. He's about to leave his body. So something going to happen. So all the great sages in the universe, including Narada Muni, all these great sages, they were there to witness the event. And Maharaja Pariksit put to them this question, but none of them felt qualified to answer his question until Shukadeva Goswami came along. As we're reading in the Bhagavatam in total these 2 days, talking about the son of Dhruva Maharaj, Utkala. When Dhruva Maharaj was preparing to go to the forest, he wanted to leave his kingdom behind to his son Utkala. But Utkala was Mahabhagavan, self-realized soul. He has no interest in running the kingdom. He was completely detached from the material world. And today's verse, he was talking about how unintelligent people, they mistook him to be dumb and foolish and stupid, that he didn't care about anything. So similarly, Shukadeva Goswami, he was in the womb of his mother for 16 years. He was already Brahman, realized he didn't want to come out. He thought, if I come out, I'm going to be in contact with the material energy, and I may fall into Maya. So until his father, Vyasadeva, pleaded with him and started reciting Srimad-Bhagavatam, then he became attracted to the narration of Bhagavatam, and he decided to come out. As soon as he came out, he just left home. Just left home wandering around naked like a teenager boy. So everyone, all the local village women, children, they were making fun of him, thinking he's just a vagabond, some madman walking around naked. But when he came upon the assembly of these great sages, all the great sages, they could recognize his body features, and they could understand that this is a very great personality, and they all stood up out of respect. Then when the villagers and children saw the reaction of the great sages, they also start to back off. That, oh, what have we done? So they were all sitting there waiting for Shukadeva Goswami to appear to answer this question of Maharaja Pariksit. And what was Maharaja Parikshit's question? He was asking the most profound question ever. If you want to ask any question, this is the most profound question. So what is the duty of someone who is about to die? What should he hear, remember? What should he hear and chant, remember and worship? That was his question. And Shukadeva Goswami began to answer his question by saying, Varyan Eshate Prashna Krita Loka Madam Nipa. Your question is very glorious. Why? Because the answer to your question is not only beneficial for yourself, but also beneficial for everyone else. Sometimes you want to know, what is a good question? Before you ask the question, you ask yourself this: does the answer to this question benefit me spiritually? That's a good question. And if you also benefit everyone else, that's a very good question. So Shukadeva Goswami said this very good question because everyone needs to hear this answer. Everyone should be asking this question. And because normally people are not interested. They work hard, they're just interested in Gramya Katha. Always about, people talk about so many things. They talk about politics. They read the newspaper and then they sit in the coffee shop and discuss all day, arguing back and forth, and everyone have their own opinions of what is right and what is wrong. And then everyone become an expert in the field and start making predictions on what's going to happen, whether it's local politics or whether it's international affair, world economy. We have never studied economy in our life, but we talk about economy of the world. Everyone is very quick in giving their opinion, and that's how we spend our time. You see these old people, retired, they don't know what to do. Every morning they go to the coffee shop, have their cup of coffee, read the newspaper, meet up with their friends, and they talk all day, and then they go home for lunch. And that's how they pass the time. So Shukadeva Goswami was highlighting that's what people are interested. They're not interested in asking all these fundamental questions. And then he went on to say, Deho Pata Kalatradis Atma Sciences Satsapi Tesam Pramata Nidanam Pasyanapi Napashati. And because of attachment, they of the body, the extension of the body, the wife, the family, bank balance, their house and cars and whatever not they have, the motorbike. So and they become bewildered by such things, and when they become bewildered, they lose their sense of intelligence and discrimination. So even though they see, pashanati napashati, they see but at the same time they don't see. You know, sometimes you look at someone, but it's blurred. You're looking at them, but we are not actually seeing. We are spaced out. So we see. And in the beginning, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was so excited. I was telling my friend, wow, you know, and they were like, what are you talking about? They could not figure out what I was talking about, why you were so excited. Now, why are you so excited about? Then when I came across this verse, I thought, okay, now I understand why. They don't share the same. And probably you all probably have this kind of experience of sharing, you know, a good fortune with others. Then finally, the next verse, Shukadeva Goswami gave the answer. Tasmat Bharata Savatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Srotavya Kirtitavyascha Smatavya Chichato Bhayam. He said, therefore, after describing all these things, he said, therefore, one should always hear, chant, and remember. Tasmat Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasmat Bhagavan and Hari, who is known as Hari, one who takes away inauspiciousness from our life. Materialistic, now they rather worship Durga, Shiva, and Ganesh, even the sun god. But Hari, Krishna, no, because he's also known as Hari. Now, the other demigods you worship, they give us so much wealth. But if you worship Krishna, Krishna take away your wealth, because it's also known as Hari. But it's not simple like that. Krishna takes away, yes, but he takes away the inauspiciousness in our life. Some things that we attach to, like gold, but actually it's not. It's just an entanglement that preventing us or blocking us our path towards come back to Godhead. So, therefore, Shukadeva Goswami said, you chant and hear and remember this Supreme Personality of Godhead, by which one can become free from all fear. Chichato Bhayam, free from all fear. And later on again, Bhagavatam also says, Srimvatam Swagata Krishna Punya Sravana Kirtanam Ridyanto Sto Hyabadrani Vidonoti Surisatam. Again, it says, Srimatam Sakata Krishna. Srimatam always, as today's word, Srimata. So there's Srimatam. Constantly hearing and chanting my name. Then I within the heart is a great benefactor. You purify one from all material contamination. Remove all the material contamination in the heart. So this chanting and hearing about Krishna and reading and hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam, whether hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting His holy name, Bhagavad Gita, these are all similarly powerful, but one needs to do it regularly. And you see this word very often in the Bhagavatam, even in Bhagavad Gita, Satatam is very often used, the word Satatam. Continuously, constantly, not one day here, not like a roller coaster, no, a steady. And this is a very important quality in devotional service, steadiness. That's why when we preach to people, new people, we encourage them, chant whatever you can, 1 round, okay, make it steady 1 round. Then when you're steady, then you can increase to 2 rounds or 4 rounds, but be steady. But don't one day, 1 round, 15, 20 rounds, then 2 rounds, and zigzag like that. Because if they do like that, then the mind is not steady. But if they do something constant, even if it's not much, they are training into the habit of steadying in the mind. So as they build up the steps of state, they become very steady and become like solid, rock solid in their devotional life. So that's important, satatam, steadiness. So when we hear and chant enough, and here is stated the word earnestly, Prabhu used the word earnestly, very sincerely, very seriously hearing chanting. Like Prabhupada said, how do we chant Hare Krishna mantra? He says we chant like the child crying out for the mother. Anyone has experience of a young child here recently? So a young child, sometimes the mother is very busy doing household, and the child is in the cradle. And the child wake up, and then the mother thinking, oh, it's not very serious. You continue with the housework. Then the child starts making a bit more noise, and the mother thinking, still not very serious. You continue with the work. But when the child starts screaming, at the top of the voice and screaming and kicking, the mother thought, oh, this is serious now. I better go check and take care. Right? So that is the Muri chant, crying out so sincerely and earnestly that Krishna will hear us and pay attention. So that's how we should chant. And when we chant like that, constantly, very steadily over a period of time, then Krishna manifests himself in the heart. Krishna is already there as Paramatma. He's already sitting in our heart, but just not manifested to us. We're not able to perceive. He actually always giving us direction, giving us instruction, but we're not listening. But only one who has steadied the mind by being completely free from sense gratification, then we are able to reach the super soul. That steadiness is achieved by constantly hearing and chanting. It's our most powerful process. Our 9th process of devotional service begins with hearing chanting. Shravanam Kirtanam. When there's hearing, then we naturally want to chant. And when you chant, we remember. And when we remember Krishna, we naturally want to offer prayers. We want to offer worship and service. And as we continue, we become more friendly towards Krishna and become his servant, take up the mission and become friend. And ultimately, Atma Nivedanam, surrendering everything. So this process is very gradual, it's very scientific. And it works. It works. Now ISKCON is not a very young movement anymore. We have over 50 years. And we have seen so many devotees, sincerely. And recently, we hear about the glorious passing away of His Holiness Kadamkananda Maharaj. How he has dedicated his life to serving, always engaged in hearing, chanting, kirtan, famous for his kirtan. And how in the end he has a very glorious death, leaving his body in the association of so many devotees, in the association of his spiritual master. So like that. And this is how devotees engage their time. And sometimes people ask, you devotees, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't go movie, you don't go clubbing, you don't do a pub and disco and so on and so forth. What do you do? Recently, my former classmates, they were all very excited. Right? There's a WhatsApp group. Somehow they found me and added me to the group. I haven't met them since I left school 50 years ago. And then they found me. And they found that all the strollers, they're coming back together. 2 of them has already died. But then the one of the main singer live in Australia, and he's coming back and they're having some reunion. The stroller has been going on with some added members. There were 2 original members still there. They've been playing. But this one of the main members come back and was, they're going to have a performance in this club somewhere in KL. So everyone's so excited. And my brother asked me, you want to go? I said, yeah, I used to be a stroller fan, but what am I going to do then? Hearing some old music and bringing back memories, that's all. So I said, I have better things to do.
Right.
Yeah. So if we don't do all these things, then what do we do? So what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter? The Chatu Sloka? 10:9. Machita Mataka Prana Bodhyatas Parashvaram Katayanta Chamam Nityam Tusyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. So that's what devotees do. When they come together, they're always hearing and chanting about Krishna and glorifying Krishna. And by doing that, they derive great transcendental bliss. So that's the bliss and the satisfaction that devotees experience. And materialists cannot understand that. Because they're looking from the outside. By looking from outside, how can they experience it? You can describe to them that they can't understand unless they participate in it. When they participate in it, you can see the guests who come. Sometimes they sit in the back, like shy. Or you engage them and to participate in the chanting and dancing, they suddenly become very enthusiastic. And the whole face just lit up. Like the other day, there was this one boy visiting from Czech Republic. And I think he has some contact with devotees. He came from Prasham, so we invited him to Sunday feast. So during the kirtan, he was just standing in the back, and then someone just brought him in, and we're going around, or like the dragon dance, going all over the temple room, outside the temple room. So he was following. And suddenly you can see his face is lit up. And then he asked, he said, will you be giving the class again next Sunday? Will you be here again next Sunday? He had a taste, he wanted more. So that's what devotees, when they come together, they're always hearing chanting about Krishna. And that is why in the 64 items of devotional service that Rupa Goswami spoke about in active devotion, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we pick up 5 most essential ones. One, chanting of the holy name. Actually, the first one he mentioned was association of devotees, chanting of the holy name, study of Srimad-Bhagavatam, worshipping of the deities, and going to holy places of pilgrimage. But if you examine all these 5, you'll find that in the association of devotees, you will find all the other 4. When the devotees come together, there's always chanting of the holy name. And the worship of the deities are there, because deities are the center of their life. And they're here talking, discussing topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. And when the discussion of topics of Bhagavatam with discussion of Krishna, that place becomes like a place of pilgrimage. So it's all there. Like here, Goluko, this is a place of pilgrimage. Later, people will come, and they'll come. When the tourists come, we say, oh, this place it still is. This place is 50 years old, 100 years old. And we will all be gone by then. But you still stand as a, as a place of worship. So this is like that. It's very important. That's why I stress so much throughout the Bhagavatam about hearing chanting, always steady, constantly. And here Prabhupada explained that sometimes devotees they want it cheap. They call it cheap devotees or materialist devotees. They want everything. They wanted the kingdom of God without God. They wanted the kingdom of Krishna without Krishna. But that was our disease to begin with. That's how we ended up in the material world. We want to become the enjoyer, the controller and enjoyer, separate from Krishna. And that's why we end up in the material world. So you want to take up spiritual life, why do you want to make the same mistake again? Of trying to be the controller and the enjoyer. Our constitutional position, Jivera Swara Pohai Nitya Krishna Das. We are eternally a servant of Krishna. That's what we need to cultivate. And the most powerful process of developing that is hearing chanting. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it said that we are eternally servant of Krishna, but everyone is a devotee, but just a covered. And that can be awakened by the process of hearing chanting. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. And he didn't come alone. He came with the whole Panchatattva came to propagate the chanting of the holy name. And he set the example himself by chanting in Kirtan and show us this is how we enjoy in the spiritual world. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. So everything he does is for his enjoyment. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, what did he do for his enjoyment? Sankirtan. Krishna do everything he does is for his enjoyment. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he performed Sankirtan. So this is the topmost enjoyment, to be engaged in Kirtan, always chanting and hearing. And we describe in Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially during Ratha Yatra when they have the Sankirtan, the different groups of Sankirtan party, how many madangas, how many kata players, each group has their lead singer, and everything is so very nicely well performed. And some of the pictures you see how the devotees just jumping, you know. One of my favorite pictures is the one that I got from you. Guru Maharaj just, dancing.
Yeah.
Right? That picture, it really was like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing like that. That picture. So that's the real pleasure of the devotees. Always hearing chanting. But nowadays, you see, every how to say, generation, devotees are slightly different focus. When we joined, it was still in the stage of the early days, the 77, 78, 79, late 70s. And we were very much in the spirit of revolutionary spirit. Almost all devotees who joined ISKCON at those times were revolutionaries. They want to change society. And we're talking about taking over the whole world and making the whole world Krishna conscious. Then things calm down a bit, and by the 90s arrived, it's more of a security. Because then they start moving out into the congregation. Congregations start getting bigger. And now another revival now is of the youth. Everyone's into Kirtan. And we see how all these youth are picking it up, being attracted to performing Kirtan. And that's very nice. It attracted them. But what I see also sometimes, some of these you are just into the musical aspect of Kirtan. But they are not chanting. They are only chanting when they are in Kirtan. They are not doing japa. They are not chanting. So that we need to teach them. That has to be added to their spiritual practice. Study of them, those who are not so much interested in philosophy or reading, they just want to perform Kirtan, which is good, nothing wrong, but you still need the other aspect of japa and study. So when they add that to it, that's wonderful. So being attracted to the Kirtan is just the how to say, the initial attraction that is holding them, binding them to Krishna. But they have to add the other element. Because philosophy, we should not underestimate the hearing of Bhagavatam and studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Because Prabhu said many times, there will be tests. There will be tests. And personally, I can attest to it, that so many tests I have to go through. And each time, the tests get more difficult, more challenging. But it is the understanding of the philosophy that gives us the knowledge and the strength to overcome those challenges and come out in one piece. Otherwise, when we face with challenges, if we don't philosophy, we start speculating, and we deal with it based on our personal material experiences, which may not always be right. So whatever experience we have has to be adjusted according to philosophical understanding. Our whole pathway is based on Guru Sadhu Shastra. That today someone in the class asked about, you say, someone is saying that when we break Ekadasi, if you are cooking in the kitchen for the deities, you still need to break Ekadasi. I said, okay, let's ask the Brahmana here, who has gone through the course on deity worship and everything. And he said that if you take just one grain of rice or grain, the body is not contaminated. So you have broken the Ekadasi, so you can go back iron and do your cooking, because the body is not contaminated by one grain. And then this devotee would ask the question and say, I cannot accept that. Then I asked her, I said, okay, I mean you have a right not to accept it, but what is the philosophical reason for objecting to it? Right? Whether we agree or if we disagree on something, then we have to have a reason that is backed by Guru Sadhu Shastra. We have to come back with a counter argument based on scripture, not just based on my liking and not liking. Devotional service is not based on my feeling, so I feel right or don't feel right. That's animal instinct. So whatever we do, whatever we say has to be backed by Guru Sadhu Shastra. So on what basis are you objecting to this argument? And he could not come up. I said then, sometimes we have to accept things beyond our understanding, because our understanding is limited by our sense perception, which is faulty. Therefore, to advance in Krishna consciousness, we have to adapt the principle of taking on board knowledge that is superior to us, that's more advanced to us, that maybe is beyond. Otherwise, if we always stuck on my own understanding, how are we going to progress? Then we are relying only on our own mental and intellectual power, which has a limit. But the way we advance is that we read something and just wow, and we challenges our thinking and expand our thinking and grow our thinking. That's why we're studying, reading proper. That's why we listen to lecture. We hear instruction from more advanced and experienced devotee. In this way, we expand our horizon. We expand our perception. Otherwise, you're always seeing things from a very narrow perspective. But when you open our mind and look at wider, the whole picture changes. What we perceive to be truth, when you open up, there are other factors in play, then the whole panoramic view is very different. And this is how we grow in Krishna consciousness. But it requires humility. To do that, we have to have some humility. So this is important, hearing chanting. So I'll stop here, and if there's any questions. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu. Thank you for the class, very nice class. I was asked this question, and I was not sure my answer was correct or not. Somebody told me that you Hare Krishna people all, you all show emphasis on chanting Krishna, Prasadam, this, that. What if I just don't do anything? I go through the process of birth and death. Wouldn't the process of birth and death would bring me to the point of where you are right now also? So I was like, then
maybe
I convinced him that no, that is a long-winded way. Ours one is direct highway to Vaikuntha. That was my answer.
Yeah, it may be, but how many lifetimes you are prepared to go through? All the birth, old age, disease, and death.
And then the
because sometimes people think their life is so comfortable. But when you actually help them to analyze their life, then they realize it's not so comfortable. The problem is that people get so caught up in the chase that sometimes they don't think about all the difficulty they have to go through. And very often they forget. One good example is myself. When after I became devotee, I realized that wow, what an illusion I was in. You see, I went to Europe the hard way. I took a boat from Port Klang to India. You probably have heard of the boat Chittambaram.
Sheep lah, Prabhu.
Huh?
Sheep lah.
A sheep. Okay, a sheep. But it looks more like boat. It's a sheep. Okay, a sheep. I was not the cheapest. I paid 100 ringgit in those days, It was in the dormitory, 100 others, laborers. In all these dormitories now, double-decker. After, there was only one bathroom for all of us 100. And after, it was a 5 days trip. After 3 days, the water was stuck. Blocked. The drain was blocked. I had to walk into all this Abhishek water, take a bath, and then come out and stick my foot in and wash. It's so dirty. And then go through India, you know, inevitably, first time you travel in India, you get diarrhea. And stuck in a train from Madras, Chennai to Delhi. I think it was 2 days trip. Those days, 2 days. And then arrived in Delhi, and then from the Amritsar, crossed over into Pakistan, Lahore. Took the night train. When the train arrived, there were people were flooding into the area like ants from everywhere. And they were climbing in through the windows. They were not coming through the normal entrance door. No, there was no queue. Everyone was just climbing whatever hole they climbed. So we thought, okay, when you're in Rome, do it like the Romans. So we also throw our sleeping bag through the window and climb out. We push up and then we pull the other one up. And we didn't bother to look for a seat because there were so many people on the train that said no way. We just lay our sleeping bag on the corridor and lie down and sleep. And all night people were climbing over us. And it was so stinking smelly. And no wonder when we woke up we realized we put our sleeping bags just outside the toilet. No wonder it was so stinky the whole night. And then we went to Khyber Pass, arrived in Afghanistan, waiting for the... And my friend wandered off down to the orange grove, trying to pick some orange because he was so thirsty. And out of nowhere, 2 soldiers came with machine gun pointing at him and trying to tell him to follow them. He didn't want to follow. And luckily we were traveling with one Afghan boy, student, that we met in Delhi. He was on his way home. So he saw what happened. He came down, talked to the soldier, put my friend behind him and tell him, go, go, go. So he got out of it. Otherwise, he followed soldier and just disappeared. He was 17 years old, my friend. And he was the team leader.
How old you were at that time?
I was 21. I just turned 21. So Khyber Pass, narrow road, and this guy think that he was in the Monte Carlo F1 race. It was just foot on the pedal on the ground, and we're looking at all this road down there. And I was so scared, I thought if I'd fall into that, I would just disappear, and my family would have no idea where I end up disappearing. No. And we tried to slow down a little bit, and then it was up again. So in this way we were traveling, right? Very hard, and we didn't have much money. So we just eating bread and some butter and some jam and some water, some juice sometimes. Trying to save our money when we arrive in Europe because we don't know what to expect in Europe. And once I arrived in Europe and started working and settled down and thought, it was so nice. Maybe next time when I go back to Malaysia, I can go back this way. Yeah, you forget all the hardship. I was thinking that way. Then after I became a devotee, and I thought, wow, such an illusion. I forgot all the pain that I had to go through getting myself to Europe. One whole year I was struggling and suffering in Europe until I met the devotees.
Which part of Europe was it?
I got stuck in Germany for 1 year. Then I also spent 1 month in Zurich. In Zurich, when I arrived, I met up with some Malaysians. I found them in some pub. They said you go there, you'll find a Malaysian. And then one side was the Malaysian, the other side was the Japanese. They were having the turf war, they was fighting, but at that time when I went there, there's a truce. But any moment they can just ignite and the whole bar will just explode. So I came there, they took me to where they stay, and all of them where I was staying were all illegal. They've overstayed their visa. And there was a house where they gave the Malaysian a room. That room is something like 10 square meters. We were 5 of us sleeping in that room. Sometimes there were 9 of us sleeping in that one room.
You went there to work actually?
I don't know what I was looking for. I just
What's
went
the
there.
reason actually?
I was looking for adventure. I was young man. I was looking there for gold and girls.
You are kind of adventurous type of youth.
Actually, not. But it was funny because I used to eat at the restaurant in KL, PJ, and I know his son. He was helping there. So one day he has his former neighbor came back with a Swedish wife, and they were talking, and there was another friend. They were talking about traveling, and young, you get excited about all these stories. So after they left, my friend turned up to me and said, "Shall we go?" I said, "Okay, let's go." there was no thing. That's okay. And then 2-3 months later, we were gone. People ask me, say, "You're 21, what are you thinking?" I said, that was a problem. I was not thinking. I didn't have a capacity to think so far in those days. I even ended up in a German jail for one night. They caught me overstaying.
Can I ask a question, Prabhu? I remember I was with Bhakti Maharaj one time, and about Ekadasi, he happened to be the next day to break fast. As you said, he just took 5 pieces of rice, grains, and he broke fast. Said, I asked, can a Maharaj like that, I don't know much about breaking fast. In fact, I'm now doing the same thing.
You can take just one grain.
One grain of rice, yeah. But he just took about 5 grains of rice and he chanted and
yeah.
And he said, it's no problem, you can take that, you can break. It's only considered breaking your fast. But
I was asking also, the breaking of this fast is especially for those who are observing nityam.
Nirjala. Oh.
So you can also break fast with water.
Water.
That's what That's what I was talking about Ambarish Maharaj today.
Right.
The Brahmanas are expert in giving advice on how to do things that you can break and not break. So drinking water is breaking and not breaking. But the actual Nijal Ekadasi continues the next day. So you break fast with milk, and then you continue fasting. Yes, Prabhu.
I just want to find out from you, what is the reaction for one who observe Ekadasi but do not break on time?
Then you lose the benefit.
No benefit.
But actually, I remember reading a statement that says it's very bad.
Yeah. That's why.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was some very heavy reaction.
Okay.
If you don't break the Ekadasi on time, within that time frame.
Within that time frame.
I can't remember exactly. It was recently I came across it.
I read once that it seems if you don't break fast at the correct time, what happens that the merit of that Ekadasi goes to the demons.
Something like that.
Something like that. That's what I read also.
Yeah.
In fact, I think there's a pastime. I'm not sure where is it, Puranas.
But actually, Prabhupada never emphasized all this Nijal Ekadasi. He just asked us to chant extra rounds, because Prabhupada emphasis was always that we preach. Right? And we will never recommend that, especially in those days we were just always on book distribution. If you're fasting, you just don't have the energy to run around all day.
Prabhu, you talked about today in this thing, pseudo-devotees, You mentioned, Prabhupada mentioned in his purports. And I believe pseudo-devotees are, I just checked Google, it says it's a non-genuine, it says pseudo-devotee, non-genuine.
Yeah, that's what pseudo means.
So very strong word. The strong word is Prabhupada uses pseudo-devotees.
Prabhupada often very strong words.
But how is that, if you start talking like this kind of things to devotees, the normal devotees outside, especially in Malaysia, where they are doing other kind of worship, Lord Shiva, Muruga, these, that, they get offended.
No, that's why we have to be very careful. Prabhu also used the word that speak truth that is palatable sometimes.
Yeah,
you know? You can also dress up what we want to say.
Yeah, you want to.
Right. And you see in the late 70s, just after Prabhupada left, sometimes devotees try to imitate Prabhupada and speak strongly like Prabhupada. But then in those days, just after Prabhupada, some of these leaders, gurus, they were just in their 20s. Can you imagine? In the 20s, you already have this big responsibility. Very difficult. So, and my temple president actually at that time, we were talking and he was pointing out, he said, we cannot imitate Prabhupada like that. Prabhupada, first of all, he's an elderly gentleman. So elderly gentleman, you say things, you get away with it. Isn't it? We get away with things sometimes, we say. And at the same time, Prabhupada also was a very aristocratic person. And by his, he just kind of commanded respect. And he's also a founder, child of an institution. So he has all that, and an author of so many books. So he has all that backing, and he can speak very authoritatively. And when he speak heavy, there's no false ego there. He just speak it as a matter of fact. Right? So we are not that kind of caliber, so we cannot speak like he's speaking. We cannot just say, oh, Prabhupada speak like that, so we can. We have to understand who we are, what's coming out from our mouth too. So then we are a bit more, we can dress it out in nicer languages.
Carefully what we speak out to.
And Krishna also teaches us in Bhagavad Gita, one should not disturb the mind of the faithless, but rather attract them to the spirit of devotion. And Rupa Goswami also said, Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna nivesaya. Don't talk too much about rules, regulation. That somehow attract them to Krishna. The rules and regulations can follow. Prabhupada didn't tell the devotees about 4 regulative principles. Only when they're sitting in front of the fire, he said, by the way, there are 4 regulative principles. The 4 regulative principles you have to follow. And there was a negotiation, how many rounds? Well, Prabhupada 64 rounds, oh, brother, they were, wow, that cannot, too much. And so, okay, 32 rounds, 25 rounds, then you will use too much. Okay, 16 rounds, bust. I know. He probably had that in mind, 16, but he started off early. Prabhupada is a very good negotiator. He was a businessman before, right. So he knows. So, yeah. So sometimes you have to understand things in proper perspective. Time, place, circumstances is very important in the application of principles of Krishna consciousness. So it's not just we read something and then we just simply throw it out. Yeah. They require intelligence how to apply them. That's why when I give classes in Chinese devotees, so every Saturday I have a Zoom class with devotees in China. I mostly focus on, I call it Krishna consciousness in practice. I speak the philosophy, but I speak in very practical terms. But of course, what I say is backed up by scripture. It's not just practical. You can always back up by some from the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, no. But because they have no association, sometimes they don't know how to apply. Their daily life, they meet with so many, they don't know how to deal with. So I talk about all these things, how to deal with different situations and how to apply this principle and how does this philosophy apply in this situation. That's right. Mainly I talk about this thing, and they like it. They say it's very down to earth, very practical.
How do we tell devotees? We realize it because we read Bhagavad Gita and say that Krishna is in the devotee's heart, the super soul. but some devotees are outside, and they are sidewise and they're doing all kinds of worship and all. They don't seem to realize that Krishna is the super soul in their heart. How do we convince them? So
tell them to read.
Kind of a difficult to
Tell them to read.
Bhagavad Gita.
It's all there. How did we know? We read. That's how we found. You see, our preaching, like Prabhu said, what is your 5 minutes of preaching? They are here and they forget.
Yeah.
They take a book home, they will always have a reference. And besides, if you tell them fools and rascals, they'll feel offended. They'll start arguing with you. But when they hear Prabhupada quoting Prahlad Maharaj, all these fools and rascals, they're attached to family, but they read and then they realize, wait a minute, he's talking about me. Right? But their false ego is not agitated because they're just reading from a book. And they can contemplate, maybe he has a point there. No, Prabhupada is speaking in some area very forcefully. There's no mincing of words. So it's much more effective. When we talk to people face to face, sometimes we have to be a bit more diplomatic. A soft approach. But Prabhupada also taught us that, going like a needle and come out like a plow. See, I myself in the early days, and I've seen devotees, they go in like a plow and come out like a needle. They go in like a bulldozer and come out with nothing. The first time I preached to someone just on the same day after I shave up, I preached to these two, and it happened to be 2 Malaysians who were visiting. I was so enthusiastic, I didn't give anyone to stop. I was just promoting them, and I never see them again.
You went like a bulldozer.
I went like a bulldozer, came out like a needle. And then second time I was preaching to one young Finnish couple on a Sunday feast. You see, the temple was in the countryside, right? They take train and then they take a bus. So I was preaching and I started talking 4 regulative principles. They were moving around, and then they said, I think our bus is coming. And they left. And I never see them again.
Yeah, this happened.
So I was thinking, I think maybe I'm doing something wrong here. So I stopped preaching for 2 years. I stopped speaking to Sunday feast guests for 2 years. I'll just sit there, I'll find a senior devotee, I'll sit right next to him and listen. See how he make the opening, how he so smoothly move the conversation from just social question to philosophy. So smooth. And I was just amazed, how does he do it? So I was just sitting there listening and learning for 2 years.
Yeah. Great.
There used to be a saying where everybody wants to learn, but nobody likes the way they're being taught.
Everyone?
Everybody wants to learn, but nobody likes the way they're being taught. So they get defensive.
Yeah. But Prabhupada taught us differently. He said, if you find gold in a garbage dump, pick it up.
Pick it up.
Instruction can come from anywhere. You just have to have the humility to answer. Once there was this one devotee. He was leaving the temple. He actually left the temple. In the old days we call it bloop. He left the temple, and he just turned around the corner from the temple. He met a drunkard, and the drunkard pointed at him. Hey, you got a dog collar. Where's your master? And he realized, oh, what happened to it? And he went back. You can take instruction even from a drunkard. Krishna can use anyone to teach us. So don't underestimate anyone. Sometimes a child. The first time I came to the temple, I was in Stockholm. I was just staying with someone's house, and he turned out to be a life member. And he said, I'm going to the temple, so you cannot be here. I said, all right, nowhere to go, I follow you. Took me a temple. And he asked, do you want to help in the garden? So I said, okay. I was digging out the weeds. And then this little boy, 3 years old, shaved, completely shaved up, wearing dhoti, came up to me and said, why are you killing these plants? I was like, I didn't know how to answer. Why are you killing this plant? And I was saved by the conch shell. The conch shell blew, and my friend said, oh, it's starting. I said, all right.
See, the little boy had so much of realization.
Yeah, and that was the temple president's son.
Wow.
So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much.